Hi, Dance. Thank you for joining me. I have a little bit of a lag. Hi, Misty. Thank you for the blue hearts. Hi, Floor. Thank you for the blue heart. All right. I hope you all had a great Wednesday. I worked on audits today. That's all right. All right. Tonight we are talking. Hi, Karen. Tonight we are talking about, do you need prior medical experience to become a medical coder? A lot of people will ask me that. They'll tell me, well, Blue, I am going to be new to the field, or I'm thinking about getting into medical coding and I've never done this before. Do you have to have medical background? Is it something that I can learn? And I'm getting into the field and I'm older, is it possible? I'm going to talk about it tonight. All right, and it's also going to be an open chat, so if you guys have anything that you want to talk about, just leave a comment in the chat and we will get to it. So, without further ado, thank you, Zena, and thank you for the blue heart. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. If you are brand new to my channel, welcome. I am Blue. I'm a medical coder. Tonight, I am talking about prior medical experience. Do you need this to become a medical coder? Is there a benefit to having some prior background in medical? So let us begin. Okay, the thing with having prior medical experience and becoming a medical coder is you're already going to have your basics down, like your anatomy and medical terminology and pathophysiology, which is really hard for new people in the beginning because it is a lot to learn. Imagine coming from being a nurse or a CNA, somebody who's already had that background, and now you're just trying to learn the medical coding part. While it is good because your base foundation's already there, you're still going to have to learn quite a bit, just as much as somebody who's coming in basically a green civilian into this field. If you are getting into this field and you are a little bit older, and by a little bit older, some people are telling me they're older at 30. 30 is still young, folks. 30, 40, 50, that is still young. I've known many people who were in their 50s and still managed to have a full career and get into it, and they were in another field. So yes, you can learn medical coding. You do not need a background in medical already. It helps, but it's not everything, because I've seen nurses still struggle with medical coding. So I mean, it really all depends on the individual. Is it a lot to learn? Is medical coding a lot to learn? Yes. Is medical terminology and anatomy a lot to learn? Oh, heck yes. And it takes years to build this knowledge. You're not going to learn it overnight. What you're learning in school, or what you're going to learn in school if you're not there yet, what you're going to learn in school is going to be just the basics, and basically learning the ABCs of this new language that you're going to be working with. Okay, so it's going to give you enough to get you started. It's not going to be everything. And sometimes people get overwhelmed at just the amount of work that you have to do in medical terminology and anatomy. It is something that you have to kind of work with yourself on, because it does get to be a lot, especially if you've been out of school for a while. It is not impossible, folks, I will say that, but it does take a lot from you to be willing to do this. You can't get frustrated with it, whatever you do. And don't be jealous of the people who already have experience in medical, because a lot of times they struggle too with just the coding portion. So everybody has a different journey, and everybody has different learning styles. Just because somebody is a nurse and they're getting into medical coding doesn't necessarily mean they're really good with medical terminology or anatomy either. They should be, but sometimes if they haven't really worked that side for a while, it does get a little rusty. It's just like anybody else. So don't compare yourself to anybody else, and don't think that you have to have all of that fancy education. You don't need a degree to get into medical coding either. Somebody asked me that the other day, do I need a degree? No, you don't. Most people, when they're just becoming a medical coder, have a high school diploma or a GED. So it is possible just to start with just that. There's nothing wrong with having a GED. Somebody had asked me, do you have to be a high school graduate? And I said, well, when they're running your background check, they're going to find out if you are not a high school graduate. So that is something that you have to be aware of. If you are going to want to get into this and you're at that stage where you don't have your high school diploma, or maybe you're just a young adult and you dropped out of high school and never wanted to go back, that's okay. You can always get your GED and then start that way, but you will need either a high school diploma or a GED to start, okay? It is worth it. It's going to give you a really good paying field to get into, and not bad for somebody who doesn't have a college degree. So that is the wonderful thing about medical coding. But on the other side, you have to know that it's going to be a lot of study. And there's plenty of ways to make this fun, so that you get that engagement when you're learning. A lot of learning medical coding is going to be independent. It is not going to be in a classroom, unfortunately. There are some people who can find in-person classes, but right now it's kind of weird, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean if you have a teacher that the teacher is going to be spectacular, right? Because sometimes teachers are just there just to collect a check and go home. I hear from plenty of students. So that is why you have to do a lot of this you're on your own for yourself. And getting into like study groups, you want to get into study groups that are with like-minded people. You don't want to be in a study group where there's people that are complaining, or there's people that are lazy, or there's people with no direction and no drive. You don't want to be around those people, because you're going to pick that up on yourself. And that's a lot of burden when you're trying to study. The best study groups are with people who are like-minded. If you know somebody is just as goal-oriented as you, that's the best time to say, okay, let's go ahead and link up, and let's go ahead and study, and we can get this knocked out. You know, it's good, but at the same time, you don't want to become dependent on that. You want to be able to rely on yourself, and then have your friend along who's doing this too, as, you know, that shoulder-to-shoulder person that will work with you when you're feeling those times. And just like you may feel times when you're not as motivated and they motivate you, you've got to motivate them when they get into those times. Because when you are in medical coding school, oh yeah, you may start off strong and then you get into the program, you're like, oh my gosh, when is this going to be over? You just have to kind of go with it. And like I said, be ready for those times when you feel less motivated and you're like, okay, this is just part of the process. This is just part of going through it. It is not anything that's unusual. It is not anything that should stop me. Okay. There's a lot of people that think, well, maybe because I'm not really into it, maybe I shouldn't do it, and maybe I should just change my mind. If you got into it and you're starting to study it and you've already paid for the program, you need to finish. There is no point in starting something and then stopping and being like, well, I just don't about my family and this and that. You will make time for the things that are important to you. Your family is important, yes. Your partner is important, yes. Your pets, they're very important too. But this is going to benefit, this getting into medical coding is going to benefit not just you, but those around you, right? Because if you're in a career that can take care of you, like financially and intellectually, and you're able to sustain yourself and your family, that's going to make you more relaxed to be around, right? Instead of just stressing and being in a low wage paying job. You know, I've been there, okay? And you're a lot different when you're worried, right? And then versus, okay, now my worry now is, okay, I need to make sure that I stay accurate. I need to make sure that I catch things and that I'm sharp. So, you know, that is the ins and outs of it. When you are looking to get into this field, it's a lot of study. Anybody can do it, guys. You just have to study, and you have to be willing to learn new things. If you're not willing to learn new things, then that's a problem. Because you have to, and it's not just learning the coding part, right? But when you get done and you pass your certification exam and you're out in the real world, you have to get that professional training, right? And the professional training is not going to become, it's not going to come in some beautiful little package. It's going to take you to actually get out there and start learning how to communicate, how to be confident in yourself, how to make yourself be more assertive and approachable at the same time. And it takes a lot. And you have to learn how to take constructive criticism, and you have to learn how to take criticism, because there's going to be people who know how to give you constructive criticism, and there's going to be, and that you can build on that, right? You can build towards your skills and those kinds of things. And then there's going to be people that will criticize you, belittle you, put you down, because, you know, maybe they feel like, oh, you're trying to show them up or whatever. And it's not really that. And you have to know the difference. Know the difference between somebody that is doing that because they are feeling a certain type of way versus somebody that's saying, hey, you're doing it this way, but actually it should be this way, this way, this way, because this way, this way, this way. And you're like, oh, okay. So that type of person is trying to help you grow. That type of person is there, and they're going to motivate you in their own way. Okay, that is the best type of person, because that person's not going to sit here and try to sugarcoat anything, right? But the other person is just going to be just a person who just criticizes. Okay, and you have to know the difference. And the person who just criticizes really has nothing constructive to say other than the fact that, you know, they want to make themselves feel better. And it's horrible, it's awful that there's adults that do this, but there are. So try to not take things personally when you're starting out and people are telling you, hey, well, you know, if you do this, maybe it'll work out this way, this way. Here's a reference for that. Okay, versus the other person is like, you think you know. So really, you know, that is something that you have to work towards, and it's just an extra part. But when you start investing in that extra part and learning that stuff, right, watching those TED Talks or reading books about self-improvement, it really does help, guys. And sometimes people think that that's a little kooky, but really when you think about that, we have to communicate with alpha personalities. We have to be able to defend ourselves. We have to be able to educate people who have a lot more education than we do. And if you think, well, you know, I just have a high school diploma or a GED and a certification, how can I educate anybody else, you know, that has more education than me? I used to think this. I used to think this a lot. When I would say, well, why would a doctor want to listen to me? I'm just the medical coder. And as a doctor pointed out to me, he said, Blue, you were trained as a medical coder. I don't know medical coding. I'm not a coder. So in order for you to be able to see what I'm doing, right? Let's try to talk this out. And if you see that there's something that's missing, then let me know. And so I'm like, okay. And here I'm thinking that I'm catching everything and everything's caught and everything's good. And actually, when you start to really look at this documentation as you get more sophisticated in your coding, right? Then it gets a little bit easier. But that's just one of those things. I don't have any background in medical as far as like before I got in it. I was so far away from medical. I wanted nothing to do with medical. What I thought of when I heard my my case manager say, well, what about medical coding? I heard medical, and I said, oh, no, I don't work with needles. Because I thought it was needles. I thought it was, you know, poking people. No, it's not that. And he's like, no, it's reading. It's reading. You don't have any patient contact. And I was like, okay, you know, I like to read, so, and that's how it all happened. So, let's see. All right, we have a bunch of people that came in. All right, Regina, hi, thank you for the blue hearts. Nilda, thank you for the hello. Ellie, hi. Hi, next. Flora says definitely 100. Hi, EW. Misty, motivation is key. I watch your videos when I'm needing a little motivation, and it's an instant mood booster. Oh, thank you. I'm so glad, because I try to be as engaging. I want people to get comfortable and be like, okay, I can do this. Because sometimes as adults, we need to be reminded that yes, we can do this, because we're already hard on ourselves as it is. And then maybe perhaps we have others that are around us that don't believe in us. And so sometimes we need another adult to say, you know what, yes, you can. And it's not always easy when you're an adult. When you're a kid, it's different, right? Because adults are like, okay, they see a kid and they fall. Oh, it'll be okay, and they're playing a game, right? And they fall and they're like, no, no, get up. You can do it. You can do it. And so that kid is boosted because yes, I can do it. Or it's a big game and they're out there playing and you can do it. You can do it. And they hit the ball and they run and everybody's cheering for them, and that kid is feeding off that energy. That it's the same thing, and adults are so willing to give that to children, but when it comes to adults doing that for other adults, sometimes that's where the hard part comes in, because it's just like sometimes other adults feel jealous, or sometimes they feel like you're trying to take their job away from them, and you're not. You're just doing your work, and you just happen to be getting a little bit more sharper than the next person. So that's one of those things when you're an adult, it's always good to find those motivating people, those motivating moments where you can say, you know what, you're right, I can do this. I feel better about this. Okay, now I can do this. I can go. And always remember to be that person for somebody else too. Because sometimes when people are out there and they're just like, okay, well, I don't feel motivated. And, you never know whose motivation you are. Believe it or not, somebody out there in your world wishes they had what you had. You ever think about that? People look at you and you think, oh, nobody's envious of me. Nobody wants to be like me. But there's actually people out there that wish, oh, they really have it together. They're going to school and man, I wish I had that drive too. And they look at you for that inspiration. So you never know who you could be motivating, who you could be inspiring. At least this is my advice anyway. Let's see. All right. Hi, Morgan. EW Blue. You are right, Blue. Doctors do not know coding. It's the coders to help with that. Yes. Morgan, I talked to someone today who told me that he interned for a shady company and they were asking him to do, that's terrible. The shady company, he said. Somebody asked me to do a show about that. I don't want to say because I know YouTube gets kind of sensitive in certain words. And so, but somebody had asked about that. That's, it's unacceptable. You cannot do that. And I always tell people I'm not losing my credential for you. I'm not. And I work too hard for it. So that's part of our ethical standards. Whether you are with AHIMA, the American Health Information Management Association, or the American Academy of Professional Coders, if you act in the capacity of a medical coder, you will follow the AHIMA standards of ethical coding. It applies to everybody who serves in this capacity. So that is something that we firmly, strongly stand against. Those two little nasty words, because that is something that is unacceptable. Only coding appropriately is our foundation. That is what we do. There is no excuse for anything else. Ignorance is not an excuse either. You didn't know, you didn't understand. It's not an excuse, because people can use that as an excuse, right? So it is not an excuse. You have to understand what you're doing. And if you don't know, then you got to ask somebody. You got to Google and try to find some resource that is reputable. CMS is a wonderful, reputable resource that you can use. I posted on the Facebook page for Medical Coding with Blue, the 2022 ICD-10-CM Diagnosis Coding Guidelines, official coding guidelines. So that way you can peruse that. But there's a lot of really good, helpful references on the CMS website. In the Medicare Learning Network. It is really good for medical coders. So I would recommend that. Did you check that out? That's what I thought. Just don't do it. That's right. It's not worth it. It is really not worth it. When you look at the things that happen to people because of this, and the bottom line is it impacts the patient. the patient above all else. It's the patient, then the provider, then the coder, right? But the patient most of all, because when you think about this, that patient has to pay. And if they are unfairly paying, think about these people, these people who are sick already, and they have to file for bankruptcy, right? And then because of greedy, selfish coding. Mm-mm. Nope. Nope, nope, nope. Missy says, right on, Morgan. We work hard to get or getting there to mess it up. That's right. You know, so that is something that you have to be very firm when you are a medical coder, because sometimes you have to not just defend yourself, but you have to be able to defend your work. Then you got to be able to defend your providers. If, you know, the auditors are saying, well, you know, the provider should do this, provider should do that. If they're already doing what they're supposed to be doing, leave them alone, right? Because that's the last thing that you need to do. When the providers are well trained, leave them alone. Do not do anything to aggravate them, because if they're already working with you, that's worth its weight in gold, because they don't always want to work with you. And if you have that little bit of magic where you can make them, okay, we're working together, that's what you want. And that's the whole goal, you know, because like I said, with coding, the money is there. And so for some of these people who want to get greedy, well, we're not making enough money. Okay, well then let's check the documentation. Are we missing anything? Because as we can always remind the doctor, we are not in the room with you. Okay, so what you do in there, it needs to be reflected on the paper. Because if you're missing something, you could potentially be missing out on credit that you could be entitled to. So what goes on in your visits? That's what I tell my doctors when I first meet them. What typically goes on in your visits? So I kind of have an idea of what goes on. If I don't know, right, they could, again, potentially be losing out and thinking that, we don't get credit for that anyway. I had heard, I didn't code for this doctor, but I had heard that there was a doctor that didn't think that they could get credit for ultrasounds that were part of the procedure. And some, yes, some no, because it's already included in the procedure. But there are some that, yes, you can, because it's not included in the procedure. So it's just like, but he thought he didn't get credit for it. So he didn't think that it was important. He said it, but he didn't like fill it out like how you would have all of your documentation lined up, right? So it is something when they find out, okay, actually, yes, this is the way that this is actually coded out. Oh, well, I didn't know. So, Ray says, is it a good habit to always ask for help as a new coder from a colleague? Just curious about first time at work. Here's the thing. When you are asking for help, make sure that you have already done your research first. Like you've already tried to look it up in the coding guidelines. You've already tried to look it up in Google. You've already tried yourself to figure it out before you go to your colleagues. Because if you're running back and forth to your colleagues, this is why people don't want to hire brand new medical coders, because sometimes new medical coders just want the answer. So essentially, the person that's already working there feels like they're doing not just their job, but somebody else's job as well. So make sure that you are doing your research first, going through the coding manual, going through Google, or trying to find the answer somehow, some way before you ask. And if you do have to ask a question, make sure you have a notepad with you so that you can take notes. Because I have trained many new coders. I have trained them. We've gone through the whole spiel and process, and then they will ask me the same question. Now, I am actually a very patient person when it comes to answering questions. I am accustomed to repeating myself. Do I like to repeat myself? I'm like everybody else. No. But there are times when sometimes you have to take a couple of runs at something in order to get it. So you have to kind of like repeat yourself to that person for them to, oh, okay, now it clicks. But if I see a person not taking notes, I am less inclined to help them. Because if you're not taking notes, now you're wasting my time. There's no respect for my time. And my time is very valuable, because for me, when I'm at work, my providers, they're my number one priority. If you are another coder and you're trying to ask me a question, you're taking, in my mind, you're taking away time from my priority, which is my providers. And it's fine for about 2 minutes, but take notes, make sure you're writing stuff down, and then, go on and go forth and do great things in code. If there's a colleague that needs help, hey, Blue, I'm not really familiar with injury coding, but I know you are. Okay, let's talk this out. Because I know if I talk it out with that person, that means that they'll get it, especially if they're taking notes, and I won't have to sit here and explain this again. But if I keep having to explain to this person over and over again, okay, no, we're not doing that. I've had many times where I've had to say, no. If I don't see you come back next time with a pad and paper, we're not going over this again, Blue. Or I tell them, we're not going over this again. They're like, okay, Blue. And sometimes they come back with a notepad and paper, and sometimes they don't. It's your loss, not mine. So, Missy said, that's good advice. Thank you. Flora, interesting. Also, what kind of questions we can ask the interviewer when we are being interviewed. So I did do, and you're welcome, Ray. I did do a video. Let me see if I can pull it up. It was a while back. I may have to do it again because I think it was last year. Interview tips. And I believe I've done interview tips. I did that earlier this year in April. And then I did one in September. Let me go ahead and give you guys this one. But there was one, I did it. It's an older video. Maybe I shouldn't share the older video. And that's the link. It's all right. I know what you meant. That's the link to the video. That's the interview tips. So the questions you can ask an interviewer, we can just go over that right now. What does the work environment look like? Are you working in an office with a bunch of other people? Are you working in your own office, or are you working at home? What is the training like? If you're going to be trained for a couple of weeks and then you're just going to be turned loose in the clinic, what would be expected of you in that time? How many days are you given to have that ramp up period? And ramp up, because some people don't know, and they always ask me, what does ramp up mean? So when you first start, and let's just say your quota is 90 for the day, which that's another question you can ask them. What is the quota for the day? How many records or how many encounters are you expecting me to code? A ramp up period means that they give you time to, they're not going to expect you to come in that day and code 90. Okay. They're going to expect that you're going to start a little slow because you're still learning the system, the electronic medical record, and all of their systems for whatever facility you're in, right? And you are going to spend time learning those things. So it's going to take you time to get used to that. So is it going to be 60 days? Is it going to be 90 days? It's typically 90 days. Sometimes they'll say it's like a probation period. They say that too, but typically the ramp up period is about 3 months. That is the average. Again, it could be different everywhere you go. I would also ask, what is, who would you be answering to? Is it a lead? Is it a supervisor? Is it a department head? That kind of thing. That's what I would ask. What did the hours look like? What is the potential for continuing education? Do they provide continuing education for their employees? That is sometimes a benefit of employment. I have heard of some employers that do not offer this at all. It's literally on the coder's shoulders to take care of their own CEUs. So you can ask that, is that something that is offered? Okay. So you want to make it about being in a company and what do they offer, not about what's in it for you. Don't sit there and ask them, well, can I set my own hours? Just ask them, what are the expected hours that I would be working? Not that, oh, well, I would really like to start my day at 9 o'clock and that kind of thing. You don't want to be so where you're having so many demands, right? You want to make it to where, like, okay, you're willing to accept anything. Okay. You just want to start, and you need to be as engaged and you need to be as excited about that. Because there's a lot of brand new medical coders that try to put demands on the employer. And to me, that doesn't make sense. You want to get in. You want to get in. So you have to be as accepting of other things rather than whatever it is that you want. There'll be plenty of time for you to get what you want later on. But in the beginning, you do need to pay your dues, like I talked about last night. Be willing to accept what the employer is going to have available. Sometimes they'll say, well, what kind of clinic do you want to work in? And you should say whatever you need. That is what I said at my second place that I worked at. They had offered me to work in the prophy clinic because they could not keep anybody in prophy, right? And professional fee, or pro fee, if you don't know, is when a patient is staying in the hospital, but the doctor comes and visits them. So they have to get paid for their professional fee service. So it's inpatient, but it's outpatient. We still work with the CPT manual and all that. We do not play around with the ICD-10 PCS manual. We still use the CPT manual for prophy coding. So it has its own set of E&Ms in the CPT manual. You can see that. So it is different rules, okay? But I was willing to accept that. I said, I'll take on anything. I was open to taking any challenge because I was there to work. I was there to get experience. And my whole goal, my why that I have said since the beginning of my channel back in 2018, my why was I wanted to get back home so I can be with my mom because my mom was sick. And so I was willing to take on anything because I knew it was going to be more filler for my resume so that when I got back to my hometown, I could apply anywhere. And that was what I wanted. So I was willing to take on anything. Well, I stayed in the prophy clinic. I did a lot of really good work for them, knocked down a lot of that backlog because I figured out how to do it. And I lined up everything and I would knock out 150, 200 in a day. And so I was able to do that because we were catching up on a lot of the backlog and we were getting it all done. And so that I had a lot of fun in because I learned a lot. Then that led me to my position here, which they were looking for a prophy coder. I had put that on my resume. That was not in the job listing. So when I got here, they were like, oh, so, we noticed that you had prophy experience. And I said, yes. What is the difference between 1995 guidelines and 1997? And I gave it to them all the way down. And they're like, okay, she knows what she's doing. That's right. And when it came time for me to switch supervisors, I got put into the same-day surgery clinic. So I did same-day surgeries. And that was fine with me because it was a challenge. I had to meet it. And I was like, okay, this is going to be more that I have. And I hadn't done a lot of surgery coding. I had done a lot of clinic coding. I had done a lot of minor procedure coding, but not a lot of same-day surgeries at all, and so that was quite a challenge. And I was put there on purpose with a with not something that was for my benefit, but more for the person that the supervisor that I was leaving from. She was like, oh, okay, you want to leave my team? Okay, I'm going to put you in this, in the same-day surgery clinic. Okay. And I didn't waver. I was like, okay, bring on the challenge. I'm totally fine with it. And I did really good. So, and that time had led me to my position at the level 1 trauma hospital. So where I did same-day surgeries and a lot of other things too. So, that, all your experiences add up and they give you that wide range. But if you're sitting there saying, well, no, I don't want to do this and I want to work in an easy clinic and I'm brand new and I just started. If I had that attitude, I wouldn't have done anything. I wouldn't be as advanced as I am now. So you have to be willing to accept anything, even though you don't have any experience. Remember, those other people that started before you, they didn't have experience either. Okay, so you're not the first one, and you're not going to be the last one. I'm just saying, guys. Hi, Ali. Jessica. Hi, Jessica. Hi, Blue. I'm hoping to start a coding program soon. What jobs do you suggest I can work now to help me hopefully one day get a coding job? You've watched my channel before. I know you have. I've had plenty of episodes about alternative jobs. How is your accuracy measured? Okay, so what they do is they take a sampling of your records that you have coded, right? Let's just say in a month. Okay, this is what happens in my facility. So we are only they only audit like between 15 and 20. Okay, luckily I got 20 that were audited. Aside from the thousands that I do in a month, right? I do a couple thousand in a month. And only 20 of those are audited. Okay, 15 to 20. Yeah, that's not good. To me personally, I think that that's not an accurate snapshot, because if you get one error, you know, you're hosed, right? But if you, they take this and they look through and they see what you coded, and then the auditor, whoever's auditing it, they determine what their codes would have been. So they determine what would have been the accurate codes had this been coded appropriately or whatever, or accurately. Then that's how they kind of total out like how, you know, good codes versus wrong codes, and then they figure the percentage out that way. So that is how they measure your accuracy. They just take a random sampling of stuff that you've already done, and then they go over it. Now, sometimes your accuracy will be 95%. Some places are like that. To me, I think that is reasonable. My facility is 97% accuracy. So if you are not meeting your accuracy, you're in trouble. So that is where the auditor works with you, and they start to say, okay, well, you've been missing this, you've been missing this. Here's the education that you need to do. And a good auditor will do that. A good auditor will explain why you are wrong. Why are you getting this wrong? And sometimes what they mark as wrong is actually correct. You just have to be able to explain yourself why, because the auditors are human too. And sometimes they don't always get things right themselves. So you have to be able to explain your codes, the reason for your codes. And if you can't, then, I mean, obviously it's going to be marked as wrong. If you and the auditor both feel strongly and you both have compelling evidence to say that, yes, I'm right, or yes, I'm right, then a neutral third party is brought in to break the tie. And it could be the department chief, or, you know, whoever they have designated as the tiebreaker. And so if that's the case, then, you know, the accuracy is adjusted. So if you were, you know, lacking in so many points or whatever, and then it'll bring you over the goal line, or bring you down low. But if you don't meet accuracy in a month, don't panic. It happens. You know, we're all human. So what happens is, if this is a pattern, then you have a problem, because then they're saying, okay, well, then you need some remedial education. Because if you're still backsliding every month, then that means either you're being careless, something's going on, you're talking on the phone, which y'all know y'all should not be doing. But sometimes people, they have their phones and they're so relaxed, and they keep them out, and they're on the phone all day, watching, doing whatever. And it's not the best place, especially when you're trying to concentrate on what you're doing. I can't listen to shows. I used to try to, but I can't listen to shows. So I have to listen to music if I need something to keep me going during the day. But that's just something that it will help you if you're trying to stay focused. But that is how accuracy is measured. And again, if you don't meet your accuracy that month, but you pick up the pace and you're doing better next month, then you're fine. You don't have to worry. It's when you continually go downhill that you have to worry. And if you think it is a personal thing between you and the auditor, which I want to say 90% of the time it's not personal. Maybe sometimes it is. It depends. But you can't assume that it is personal. The auditor is doing their job. Their job is to look for errors because the accuracy of that facility rests on their shoulders, right? And so you can't take it personally. Do I like it when my supervisor who does my auditing, do I like it when she finds an error? Heck no. But sometimes when I see something that she's marked wrong and I'm able to explain, okay, no. Here's my reference. And she's like, darn it. But we go back and forth with each other because I know how to argue in audit. She knows I know how to argue in audit. I'm not going to sit there and just roll over and be like, okay, yeah, you marked it wrong. Okay, no, okay, you're the supervisor. No. If I feel like, okay, now wait, hold on, wait a second. Maybe this level she's saying is not right is actually right. Let me go ahead and go through this and I'll show her how I got to that. And then sometimes she'd be like, oh, you know what? I didn't even notice that. Or, darn it, Blue. But yeah. Oh, we have gone rounds. But the thing that she says that she appreciates is that I come with my AHA coding clinics. I come with my coding guidelines. I come with my books. I'm ready. Let's go. Let's rumble. Because you're not going to mark me wrong without a fight. Okay? Now, if you mark me wrong and I'm wrong, I'll admit, oh gosh, I didn't see that. Okay, I was wrong. But if I'm right, oh, I'm coming. Let's go. I am going to make sure that this gets marked correct, and I'm going to, get my numbers adjusted because it means that much to me. And there's sometimes when people, they don't want to argue with the auditor and they'll say, well, they said it was wrong. Auditors are not always right. Okay. But if they're able to explain to you how they got to their rationale and it's legitimate, like through AHA Coding Clinic, the coding guidelines or something, and it's not just because they said so, then you have to give them the benefit of the doubt and believe that they are in it for the good and not for the bad. Okay, I've had bad auditors. The supervisor that I had to leave, she tried to mark me as wrong. They had to bring in the chief broke the tie. I was right. She still insisted that I was wrong. And I'm like, whose team are you on? We're on the same side. You should be happy that you have a coder who has 100% on her audits. Why can't you just be happy? And I asked her that, why can't you just be happy? Well, no, I don't think it's right. You don't think it's right. There's a difference. You don't think that it's right. But if the book says, if this would be the same way if she was right. I said, if you were right and I would have to accept it, I would accept it. I don't understand why you just can't accept it. Well, so again, if the auditor is right, let them have it. But if the auditor is not right, then make sure that you have your references. Make sure you have your resources. And the coding guidelines don't lie. Okay? They are there to support you. And you have to learn how to use them. And that's why I tell you guys, make sure you read your coding guidelines. You don't have to memorize them. Somebody told me today in a comment that they said they feel like they have to. Everybody says, and she acknowledged, everybody says you don't have to memorize the guidelines, but I feel like I have to. That's on you then, honey, because that is brain power that is being unnecessarily expended because you're insisting on memorizing the guidelines. The guidelines update. I don't think I have to go into the fact of 2020 and 2021 guidelines. You want to look at the difference between the two? There's plenty of differences between the two. All that work to memorize those guidelines, and then you have to do it again. So don't waste your energy, folks. At least this is my advice anyway. Misty, what is auditing exactly? How do I explain this? You have to, okay, when you're coding, everything that you code, right, has to be measured for accuracy. Has to be measured for accuracy, because if you are coding incorrectly, you have the ability to be able to skew results when the data miners, right? The data miners are people who go in and they data mine and they pull certain codes, right? Like for ski accidents, right? I'm gonna go back to that one, because in the state of Colorado, I've been saying it, that a few years ago they had a whole study about spiral fractures, because spiral fractures occur in high velocity, high speed accidents, right? And they were finding that a lot of people in Colorado were having spiral fractures. Now, why is that? Because it's a ski capital, and there's a lot of skiing that happens there. So based on this information that they were able to data mine, they were able to say, okay, we can get this funding for public service announcements, safety classes, and safety advertising and things like that. So that was that, and research. Okay, so they did all those types of things with that information. Now, this was a code these were codes that medical coders were selecting. So these records need to be looked at to make sure that it is correct. So that is when an auditor, somebody who's not coding it, but is a third party, is looking at it and saying, this is the documentation, these are the codes that were selected with the procedures that were selected. Is this accurate? And the auditor can look at it, and an auditor is somebody who's had experience typically, although I don't know now, people are getting an auditor credential and not having a lot of experience. But they're looking through this. An auditor should be somebody who's a seasoned coder, who has been around, who knows a lot, who's been a veteran and been able to look at a lot of different things and have lots of experience themselves. So they can look at this thing and say, you know what? I see that this coder did a good job. They coded everything appropriately. These codes are correct. Okay, close that one. Next. Okay, I see this. I see the record. I see the codes that were selected. No, I don't agree with this code. They're not using the appropriate 7-digit character on these injuries. So let's go ahead and audit this. So they go in, they audit, and they say, oh, you missed 3 codes here. Okay. So let's go ahead and put this aside. Potentially the coder has 3 incorrect codes. So let's go to the next record. Okay, well, I'm looking at this record. I'm looking at the codes. The coder did good. Next. Okay, looking at this one. Okay, the coder looked like they missed a procedure. They missed a procedure. That's a lot of money that gets missed and left on the table. Okay, this one is wrong. Let's go take it back to the coder and let's talk about this. Next one. So that's what the auditor does. They're not the ones that are coding it. They are the ones that are just looking at what, and an auditor being somebody that's measuring the coders for accuracy, okay? Because you'll also hear that, coders are doing auditing, basically looking at the codes that the provider has selected, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when the coders are being measured for accuracy. That is what an auditor does. So hopefully that answers your question exactly, that's what auditing means, hopefully. I tried to make sure that I say things because I don't want to assume that people know. Sometimes I think that people know and they don't know, and then they remind me that they don't know. So let me know if it needs to be further explained. Hi, Mitney, I'm doing great. Okay, Misty, I get it now. All right. Morgan, great point. Do your best, be confident in your work and willing to learn. Floor, Blue, what is the difference between modifier 26 and TC? Is 26 for independent radiologists? Why are you bringing me these questions here? I'm going to put this on Facebook. I'll do a post on Facebook, okay? So I can get the book out and get some examples, and that'll be more motivation for y'all to follow me on Facebook. But I will remember that one. Desiree, thank you so very much. I'm struggling with distractions right now. I'm strong and know that I will succeed. Thank you. Oh, you're welcome. Misty, oh, I totally understand it now. Thank you so much for the clarification. And thank you for the blue hearts. But yes, that is hopefully a good explanation of what auditing is. And some people will take it personally. I've heard from coders who say they just can't stand to be told that they're wrong, so they want to argue with the auditor no matter what. And to me, that's not right. You're never going to grow if you're not willing to accept somebody else is telling you that you're wrong. And it may be just a personal thing that you just can't stand that particular person. That's when you have to put your own personal feelings aside. Do I like everybody that I come into contact with at work? No. That would be a lie if I told you I did. Am I able to maintain my professional composure around those folks? Yes. Can I smile with them? Yes. Are we going to go have a drink after work? Heck no. But I can interact with them. I can put my own personal feelings aside and say, you know what? This is for the greater good. This is for y'all to understand whatever skill I have to be able to share with you. I'm willing to do that. Oh, you have a skill? Okay, I'm willing to listen and put my own personal feelings aside about you because it involves coding. It has nothing to do with you personally, but has everything to do with the coding. And that's the kind of mindset you have to get in. It's not personal when these auditors are telling you that you're wrong. As long as they can say, okay, this is my reference. This is how I got to there. This is how I mean this. You know, because auditors, again, they're human too. They don't always catch everything. Sometimes they give you the wrong code to do. And then you're like, okay, well, no, wait a second. That doesn't make sense. Okay. But not start by not taking it personally. Start by saying and being open to that. You know, I have known people who will not take advice from me personally because they don't like me personally, but know that I am very good at a particular subject, that I am considered a subject matter expert for that subject. They will not take my advice because of me personally. Now, do I run around and say, oh, ha, I know this and I know? No, I don't. Again, it's a thing that you have to train yourself. You have to be professionally mature, and not everybody is as enlightened as you, right? So that's why you can't take things personally, and you have to be able to put your own personal feelings aside about people that you work with and still be able to say, you know what? We got this. When I had a partner a few years ago in the clinic with me, I told her, I said, we have to stand shoulder to shoulder. Whatever I say, you have to agree. Whatever you say, I have to agree. In front of our providers. Never can we disagree. Well, Blue, I don't know. Okay, now hold on. I'm going to support you. I'm going to back you up. But you have to back me up too. And it takes a lot because sometimes you may not feel like that person is saying, okay, well, you know, I don't know if I agree with that. But you can always issue a retraction. The worst thing that you can do when you're working with your providers, where your providers can see you and your other coworkers, is disagree and bicker in front of them. You can always stop the conversation, like get a signal going that, you know, we'll come back to this later. Okay, that's cool. We can do that. But you're never going to sit there and be like, okay, yeah, I disagree. Never disagree with your coworkers in front of your providers. Never. You got to stand shoulder to shoulder so that they can see a united front. If they see a united front, then they're more willing to go along. Because what do children do when they see mom and dad fight, right? This is the best example, right? When you see mom and dad disagree on something. Well, I know if I go to mom, she's not going to let me stay out past 10. But if I ask dad, dad will say, well, be home by 11 o'clock and make sure you call me. Okay. Instead of both parents standing shoulder to shoulder. Okay, well, I know I can't mess with either one of them because I know both of them are going to tell me I have to be in by 10. It's that same thought process when you are at work, when you're working with partners. You got to be able to stand shoulder to shoulder. And you got to be able to commit to that and be like, okay, this is a good person. This is a good coder. They're a good, solid coder. And you know, for that, our providers went along. Because trust me, when we first got them, oh no, they were all over the place and just waiting to see if we were going to disagree. And we never did. And that was one thing I said. We have to stand shoulder to shoulder on this one. We have to. And the second that it almost didn't happen, woo, I was like, no, we can't let this happen, because no matter what, they're going to trust us if we stand together. If we start, if they know that they can get away with certain things with you, they're going to go to you. If they know they can get away with certain things with me, they're going to go to me. So we need them to be able to go to either one of us, right? And she agreed. And it worked out. So that's something that you have to work on. So just whatever you do, when you start getting in the field and you start having those encounters with your auditor, and you start having those encounters with your coworkers, and you're working in the same clinic, try to get on the same page. Get that shoulder to shoulder. Who was it? Mulder and Scully. You had to get that shoulder to shoulder, so that you can have that united front. United front is something that is so important, because you'll see some providers who get very aggravated and they'll say, you coders never say the same thing. My providers can't say that. And they never could say that. Not in that clinic, because we both said the same thing. And so that's why I insist, they're mine. This is my clinic now. They're all my providers. And so they know they can trust me. They know that they can ask me questions, and they're going to get consistent information. And that's just my point. Thank you, Olivia. Thank you, Misty. But yes, it is something, this profession. But having not just a medical background, but having background where you're working with people and you're working with the public, that does help, because you have those de-escalation skills, especially if you've been a cashier, right? You know how to calm people down. It's the same thing. Whether it is your auditor and you're having those spirited conversations of like, no, it's this way, no, it's this way. Or with your coworkers, well, I found this coding clinic, well, no, this is the way we do it here. Okay, no. Coding clinic trumps. This is the way we do it here. There are some things that facilities have, like certain special rules that they can make. But for the most part, those coding guidelines are true to what we stand by. So, that is something to keep in mind when you are out there in the real world. But yes, has it already been an hour? I swear, this time just flies with you guys. But how do you minimize distractions when you are a medical coder? If you are in a room full of people like I was at one time, I was in a horrible little tin can of a room, 20 of us, 20 women, in bullpens. It got loud. Trust me, it was loud. Headphones. That was what I had. I had headphones. I put my headphones in and be listening to music. And that was how I was able to stay focused. I did not have my cell phone out. I still do not have my cell phone out. Sometimes I do not get a good signal. Sometimes I get a good signal in my office. So when I do get signal, sometimes I will look at the phone. But for the most part, I'm into whatever I'm into. And I will not move until I am done. I was working on audits today. And when I'm working on audits, I will close the door and keep it closed. And they know that, hey, she's doing something in there. She's really concentrating on something. And I won't move until I'm done. Because sometimes you have to think of a way to present your argument. And then you got to find your reference. And it takes time and focus. And so that is the only way that you're going to be able to train yourself, is by giving yourself those tools of, the headphones if you are in a room full of women, or people, because there's more males that are coming into the field. So that's great. I always say the more males that come into this field, the better, because it balances out the departments. And I think that's very important. This is just me. But when you are trying to minimize those distractions, sometimes you have to be the one to put your foot down too and be the bad guy. When I worked with those 20 women, a lot of women would walk by me. I was in my own little island by the door. Okay. There was nobody next to me. All the other girls had people next to them, and they were on these rows. I was the only one by myself right by the door. So I had everybody walking by and shaking my chair and pulling on my hair and, you know, trying to distract me. And I finally, you know, had to say, hey guys, listen up. I said, I'm just because I'm right here by the door does not mean that you need to pet me every time you leave this room. Leave me alone. I said, y'all see me that I'm trying to work. Well, Blue, we just want to talk to you. I get it. But talk to me when I don't have my headphones on. You know, I said, I hate to be the bad guy, but I'm trying to concentrate on this here. And they're like, okay. You know, they didn't like it. But again, priority one, my provider, my productivity. I'm not going to sit here and get distracted because of you, you know. You can't, and you have to put your foot down because they will try to talk to you and they will try to keep you distracted. So you have to maybe talk for a couple of minutes and then get right back to work, because otherwise you'll be gone the entire day talking, you know. And sometimes people don't know how to stop, and so you have to be the firm one, you know. Just saying. But yeah, that's what I would recommend to minimize those distractions. Stay away from the phone. Keep your phone in your purse. Put it on silent. If it is truly an emergency, they can reach you, calling the office or whatever. But you don't have to be on your phone the whole time. I've seen coders be on their phone and then complain that they can't keep up with productivity. Productivity is too high. No, productivity is fine, but you're on your phone. There's a difference there, you know, or you're calling, you're just talking to people. Okay, why don't you try focusing on what you got versus being on the phone? So, you know, that is the whole thing about it. Try not to over caffeinate yourself. That is also a problem. People get over caffeinated and then they can't focus. Caffeine is something that you got to be real careful with, because if you drink too much, then you're going to be jittery all day. But if you have just enough, it'll give you just enough to keep you engaged and keep your attention going. So, you know, that is what you have to find, that healthy balance of caffeine. Make sure that you drink water, because that's also another thing that will keep you distracted too. If you're thirsty, you start to get headaches, or if you're not drinking enough water, which is possible, it'll keep you distracted too. So make sure that you're eating balanced. Make sure that you're drinking water, taking plenty of breaks when you need to. Take your 15-minute break, or if you have that at your facility. I have 2 15-minute breaks, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, and we cannot put those with our lunch break, but you can take them mid-morning and mid-afternoon, and you just, you know, walk around, do what you have to do, take a break, stretch, get up, and that will also keep you focused, you know, so that way you can get through the day. And if you get to a point in the day where you know you're dragging, then maybe you need to switch it up. Okay, switch it up and do something else, or work on another provider. I know for me, I have one provider right now. He needs a little bit of extra attention. And I tell him, I actually go to him sometimes and I tell him, it's a tension thing, isn't it? He's like, did I forget something again? I go, come on, you know? So we have to have this conversation. And it happens every other month or so. I have to get right back in there and talk to him. But I know for me, I can't work on his encounters first thing in the morning, because there's a lot of things that are going on with his encounters. So I have to switch it up, and I'll go to one of my podiatrists that I know is really good, and I fly through there. And it makes me feel like I've accomplished something, and I get 10 or 15 done, and then I start working on the harder stuff. Then I go back. But I make sure that I keep up with production, so that on those providers that I know I need a little bit more time on, I get that time, you know. Yeah, cell phones are a big distraction nowadays. They are, you know, and people are addicted. You know, it's hard to be away from your phone sometimes. I understand. But work is work, guys, you know, so. Morgan says, when someone asks, do you know ICD-10, what do they mean? I understand how to use it. Does that mean I know it? Do you know how to diagnosis code? Is that what they mean? Probably. Because it's ICD-10-CM or ICD-10-PCS. You got to be real careful. That's why when I see people's resumes and they only have ICD-10 and they don't have CM or PCS on there, it makes me very nervous, because which one are you referring to? And you can't always assume that the person who's reading those resumes is going to know, right? So you have to be very clear. If somebody's asking you, do you know ICD-10? They're probably, I would assuming asking you if you know how to do diagnosis coding. And if you say yes, well, then it's because you know. If they mean ICD-10 PCS, that's the inpatient procedures, that is something completely different. So you'd have to make sure that they are clear about that, clear about what do they mean. I understand how to use it. Does that mean I know it? As long as you understand how to use it, that is basically what they're asking you. Are you certified? Are you brand new? Are you still in school? What is your status there, Morgan? And I've always loved that name, Morgan. I always thought that was a pretty name, Morgan. I used to know a girl in school, her name was Morgan. And I would like the way she would write her M's, because she had this cute little flag on her M. I was like, oh, that's cute. But let's see. I'm not certified yet, so you're still in school. So yeah, that's what they mean. They're just asking you if you know how to do diagnosis coding. I assume CM, not PCS. Do you know what certification you want to sit for? With AHIMA or AAPC? Which one? Or have you not gotten that far yet? Sometimes coders don't know until they get all the way to the end which one they want to sit for. And it's understandable. I think it's better when you have a path, when you kind of know which one you're going to get. I knew when I started the school for medical coding, I knew which one I wanted to get. I knew I wanted to get the CCA. Some of the other people, they were like, wow, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, that's what I want to get. The CPC. Okay. Yeah. CPC is all outpatient. So, yeah, they would not ask you if they know that. They would not ask you for PCS. I'm taking it in December. Well, as long as you keep studying, just keep studying. Go through those workbooks. If you have the ICD-10, listen to me. The AAPC study guide, okay? I do recommend that. It is a very good book. Even if you get the one from last year, it's totally fine if you are studying with it. And you can get it a little bit cheaper. It's cool, because you're just going through the scenarios. A lot of the codes are still the same anyway. Sometimes they may have updated and you'll be able to tell. Yay, Misty! I always cheer for the CCA as well, too. And thank you for the blue hearts. But yes, with the CPC, right? And going through that workbook, it is a really good workbook. And like I said, I like it because it's got the explanation in the back, I've only seen a couple of the answers that I was like, I don't know if I agree with that. But for the most part, it's very comprehensive and I like it. So it is a good practice, okay? But don't rely on the fact that you do really well in this book to say, okay, well, yeah, that means I'm going to pass my exam. When you're taking the CPC exam, it's multiple choice. The whole thing is multiple choice and it's paper-based. And if you're going to a facility place where you have to have it proctored, okay, good. I'm glad. So when you're going to this place and you have it proctored and they give you this paper stuff, then you're able to go back and you can, skip over those ones that, there's a little bit harder and you can go back to them at the end, which is great because with the AHIMA exams, we can't do that. We cannot flag anything. We take our exams through Pearson VUE. And when you go, you have to answer the question and move on to the next one. There is no flagging. There used to be flagging, but there is no flagging anymore. So, but it is just which is the way the tests are. But you have multiple choice with AAPC, with the CPC exam, and two of those answers is not going to make any sense. The other two are going to be really close. I would make sure that I study and study and study and look at the sections. What do they begin in, right? Like all your injury codes are going to start with S. All of your A, D, and S, and then that's the 7th character. So you're going to know if you're looking for injuries, you're going to know that, right? If you're looking at different diagnoses, what range do they start in? We know like infections, they start with the A's and that kind of thing, and then you have all of your other ones, right? Why did I say that? Why did I say A? Not A. Hold on 1 second. Yeah, A's. I'm losing it today. Yes, A's, that's your A range for your codes on your infections. And then for your neoplasms, you got the C codes. So basically knowing that to kind of like give you an idea of where you are in the book and what you're looking at, that is a good practice for you. At least that way you can be aware of those things. Because looking at the codes and knowing, okay, what range it's in, like for diabetes, okay, E11.9, okay, I can see that code and know that that's a diabetic code. Hypertension the same way, I-10, so knowing that will help you, and that's going to happen with practice. Okay. Flora says, can we take both certifications? I'm going for the CPC insurance with Jay. I am currently enrolled in AAPC CDEI course with no coding experience. I am about to sit for my RHIA exam soon. I need to start practicing coding. CDEI. Clinical documentation expert instructor? Is that what the CDEI is? Is that what CDEI is? Answer that. Answer that one for me. Because otherwise I have to go to the AAPC website. It's going to bother me. Floor, you do not have to have 2 certifications. You do not have to take them both. Pick one. Now, I say this a lot. I say this all the time. New coders, all you need is one. It does not make any sense to have a CCA and a CPC. That makes no sense. Why? Because the CCA covers both inpatient and outpatient. The CPC, it covers only the outpatient. And before anybody says, people do look for the CCA. I look for jobs all the time. I look at, as far as like doing research for the show, okay? I'm happy where I am. When I'm doing research for the show, I see, because I know what job titles to look at. Sometimes people will put in medical coder. Yeah, if you put in medical coder, you're going to see other certifications asked for. Yeah. But if you know which other titles to look at, then you're going to start seeing more. So that is something that you got to think about too. Now, again, when you have 2 credentials, it's not going to get you hired faster. It's not going to get you more money, because a lot of people will think that, well, if I have 2 certifications, it's going to get me looked at faster. No, it's not. No, it's not. Because when I started, I had 1. When I got my first job, I had 1. Second job, I still had 1. Third job, I still had 1. Fourth job, I still had 1. And I still have 1 today. I have my CCSP, the Certified Coding Specialist Physician-Based certification right now. When you have multiple credentials, it needs to be because you've had experience in the field. When you've had experience and you start building on, like you start getting this CDEI and that kind of thing, and all these other ones, the CDIP, if you're with a HEMA, you want to get the Clinical Documentation Improvement Practitioner credential. That makes sense because you've had time, you've done that. If that is something that you want to specialize in, that makes sense. When I see brand new medical coders with a string of credentials after their name with no experience to go along with those credentials, it worries me because you're spending money that you don't need to spend, number 1. Number 2, more continuing education units. Number 3, The association membership fees, AAPC requires this every year. AHIMA does not. They will charge you the non-member price, but they don't require you to have membership. AAPC does. Otherwise, they will revoke your credential. That I heard. So that is something to keep in mind. Again, having multiple credentials means, or it should mean, that you have experience and that you are specializing in this or that or whatever. You don't need a billing credential. You do not need any of those, because your certification, CPC, CCS, the CCA, the CCSP, they all test you on reimbursement. All of these exams test you on reimbursement. So again, having a billing certificate along with that, you're basically being redundant now. So that is something to think about. It's your money. It's your money, it's your time, it's your energy. But for me, I would rather keep my money, invest in a class that would benefit me, rather than another showboating credential that I don't need. Now, if I have experience and I want that credential because it's going to be beneficial for me in my career, yes. But if I'm brand new, oh no, I'm keeping my money. I'm going with the one certification, because that's all you need. Never have I ever seen any job listing say candidate must have multiple medical coding credentials to get hired. Never. And I'm not here to sell you guys anything. Anybody that is will tell you, oh, you'll look so great if you have all of these. You'll make more money. No, you won't. No, you won't. I'm just saying. Oh, inpatient. Oh, well, okay. Jay says, I am a facility claims specialist, so I'm more comfortable with inpatient claims. And you're welcome, Floor. Yeah, you really should. What does it stand for, though? That's not that. Certification. Okay, it's giving me everything else but what I want. Okay, I have to go to AAPC. Certifications. Okay, clinical documentation expert, inpatient. Okay, that's what that is. And you definitely need to practice coding. Definitely. Yeah, I found it now. You have your RHIA exam coming up, right? Why didn't you just go for the CDIP? That's with the HEMA. If you with not sure how this will go since I don't code, and see, that's my question. You're putting out money for the certification. Now I don't know your story, and okay, but hear me out. With the RHIA, it is more on the managerial side of the house. So there's very little coding in the RHIA program to begin with, okay? But if you're trying to be a CDEI, right, clinical documentation expert inpatient, that is a person that is going to be looking for the holes in the documentation. And in order to be able to see keenly those holes, right, they like for these people to be former nurses or people who've had experience for many years in coding, right? Because then you're going to understand the pathology. You're going to be able to see things that are missing. You're going to be able to find those holes so that the documentation can be more complete and more full. But if you've never done the coding, it's going to be a little bit harder to be able to see what the coders need to see. And see, that's the part that confuses me about things like that. See, having the RHIA is great because this means that you want to be in a managerial position. That is somebody that's chief of the department. Okay, they run whole departments. The success of that department is the RHIA responsibility. Sometimes there are some RHIAs that will want to be coders, but you're really working below your skill level, right? Your skill level for the RHIA is somebody that's in that top tier spot. To be a CDEI, now you're saying that you're a clinical documentation expert inpatient. You're going to be able to look at these and be able to see where the holes are. If you haven't done the coding and if you haven't had that practice, it might be a challenge because while it's great, if you haven't been in it, it's going to be an uphill battle because the coder may work with you and say, if you choose to get into that spot, right? And the coder may work with you and say, okay, well, this doctor's missing this, and this, and this. And if you don't really get why, it's easy for you to say, okay, well, no, I don't think that's really important. And then the doctor would be like, okay, this is great. I can just continue doing whatever I was doing, right? But if that CDEI is somebody that is like, okay, well, I've been a coder before. Yes, I see. Here's the holes. Because sometimes the coder's not going to be able to catch it because sometimes the coder doesn't know. So it really, the person who's in this position needs to be somebody who's had the experience, who's had the background and the know-how, and really can look at this and say, okay, yeah, I see that this is missing, or there's not enough detail here, or this patient came in with this condition, and what else is going on? They'll be able to ask those questions. So, I mean, I'm not really sure what your plans are. What is it that you're trying? What is your ultimate goal? I should ask you that. What is your ultimate goal? Hi, Rochelle. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for the blue hearts. I have an AAS with health information technology. I know how to code. I just don't code. I have a BS in health admin, which is true because you said that you're going to be sitting for the RHIA exam soon. And I get that. But again, there's not a whole lot of coding that goes on with that. But what is your ultimate goal? Why would you want to do this as well? This CDEI. Is it your goal to be like a department chief for an inpatient side, or what are you trying to achieve? Because if you're thinking about like, okay, the importance of this RHIA exam or this CDEI exam, I mean, which one, right? To me, the RHIA, that's the one that's going to get you, that's really going to give you the ticket, right? Anywhere, anywhere you want to go. But if you need more practice with coding, there's always Just Coding that you can sign up for. Just Coding. If you're interested, this is not an ad for Just Coding, but justcoding.com. It's all together one word. And they have access to free 5-question coding quizzes. They do quizzes for inpatient coding, like not inpatient coding, but inpatient procedures like the PCS, diagnosis coding, and CPT coding. So it's a great way to get practice for free. You can just cover up the answers because it's multiple choice, and then you can look up the codes in your book, and that's a good way to practice. Getting the CPC study guide is another good way to practice, but that's on the outpatient side. The one that I recommend is the AHA, the American Hospital Association for inpatient procedure coding and diagnosis coding. This book, I recommend this book. This is the ICD-10 CM and PCS coding handbook with the answers. This happens to be the 2019 version, but that's okay because it's a good thing to practice on. The way that it's explained in here, and this is by the American Hospital Association, the way that it's explained in here makes things a lot easier to understand. Now, I have come across a lot of books, a lot of different publishers. And believe me, this is not an ad for AHA, but this book, oh my goodness, this book is the best. Okay, I'm just saying, when it comes to learning this stuff. So getting something like this and practicing would be good for you. If you want to get where you're practicing more of the coding. But yeah, I mean, to me, I don't know what your plans are. But when it comes to the leadership side of the house, I always tell my leaders that are watching to think about your impact, what you are going to be able to do for your facility, and what you're going to be able to do for your coders once you get into that position. At least that's just my advice anyway. But you would really need to practice a lot more on the coding, so that way you can spot the things that are missing as well. Because different hospitals and different facilities have different ways that they use and utilize their CDI people, right? And sometimes they utilize them for education with the providers. But again, you have to know what you're looking for in order to be really effective. I realize I don't want to manage anyone, LOL. I'm just taking it now to have it. I thought I need RHIA and CDI certification, but now I know I don't. Okay. Dan says, we're using the 2022 version of that AHA book in my coding course. I love it. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much. I will get that book. Okay, awesome. Yes. A lot of people, and that's the thing too, a lot of people think that, they need the degree, right? Because depending on which generation you're coming from too, right? We were like, you had to have a degree. And with medical coding, it's one of those really weird, unique fields that you actually don't need a degree to do really well. And so that's the shocking part, right? But I don't know. But I hope that helped, at least, that you have that. But you know what? Having an RHIA is still a good thing to have, because you can still educate. If you don't want to manage, you can still educate with it. Okay? So that's always another good option. And especially if you want to get into the clinical documentation side of the house where you're doing that, you're going to need to be able to be a really good educator. Okay? Because being able to communicate with the coders, and not just the coders, but the providers as well, because you're going to be able to tell them, hey, let's work together on this. And then the coders, oh, you guys make sure that you watch for this. So you have to be able to be that liaison person for both sides. And you got to have that charm in order to be able to do that. Lisa, I'm self-teaching myself, and I am following the 7-step process you use. Yay! What is the main certification I need to get started? You have your choice, okay? CCA or the CPC is a good one to start with. If you want to do just outpatient coding, the CPC is that one. There's also the CCSP, which is a Certified Coding Specialist, physician-based, and that is all outpatient coding, but that is with AHIMA. So you have your choice, whichever certification you're sitting for. If you are studying on the inpatient side and you feel confident like you can do it, you have the choice of two, the CCA or the CCS. CCS is more advanced. It's a longer exam. The CCA is a 2-hour exam. It is considered entry level. A lot of people say, well, you can't get a job with it. Really? I got 4, and I got raises each time. So people ask for it, trust me. So you have your choice there. So any one of those, CCA, CCS, CCSP, or the CPC, any one of those. This is my advice. And thank you for using the process. Elvia, your information is always so valuable, Blue. Oh, thank you for the blue hearts. Jay, yes, born in the 80s. School was drilled in my head. Okay. 80s baby. Me too. Caroline, hi, welcome back. Thank you for the blue hearts. But I'm feeling very deflated tonight. Oh no. I got 100% on my quiz for school, and then on my practice exam, I got a 53. And I have no idea what I'm doing wrong, struggling in both anesthesia and surgery codes. Oh my goodness. And Desiree says yes. It's no pressure learning, right? Good luck. I don't know what you're doing wrong either. If you got 100% on the quiz in school, but then a 53%, were you rushing? I mean, that's a huge difference, because I mean, if you were grasping it, I would expect the practice exam to be a little bit higher than that. But don't depend on the practice test either to gauge what you're doing. If you got 100, it depends on the questions. If you were rushing, that may have caused a 53, but I would really think that even if you were rushing, you would have probably been in the 80s or in the 70s if, that was, you know what I'm saying? So, I don't know. That's, it happens though. Sometimes we don't know, and it just happens, and it's not anything to feel deflated about. It's just something that happens. Everybody has a day. It happens to everybody. Even when I sometimes get audits, right? Today I was going over an audit. I saw some codes I selected. I was like, what the heck was I thinking? And so it's just like, but it happens. People make mistakes. And at the moment you thought I was right. And then you look at it again. And you're like, well, wait a second. What was I thinking here? It's the same thing. I mean, you'll get better with time. You just got to practice. Don't beat yourself up over one bad score, though. Whatever you do, don't beat yourself up. So, do you have any recommendations for a medical dictionary, or do you ever use one? I use one all the time. I like Dorland's medical dictionary. I like the illustrated one. But you can use Tabor's, you can use any of them. But I use them occasionally. But then you can always look on the internet as well if you're stumped on something. I like Dorland's because the book that I have is illustrated. So if I need to see a picture, it's right there. I mean, then it's nice and it's color, and yes, they have the different volumes, like not volumes, but like the editions, like the one that I have is the 31st edition. Kind of old, but I mean, come on, it's still a great book. It's still got a lot of good words in it, and there's really not a whole lot of changes from that book to the current book. So, I mean, it really all depends. Even a little cheap one is cool too. I mean, they all have the same words. Some are more comprehensive than others. Some have more illustrations than others. But that's why I like the Dorland's one. But that's just me personally. Again, not an ad for Dorland's, but but anyway, if you guys are studying, doing the self-study, I did update the self-study video, the template in the description box. I did update it because I know that it's like 2022, so I did a lot of those. There's a couple of the workbooks that I could not find in 2022, but it's okay to still use the 2021 because it's literally almost a lot of the same codes anyway. If you do see something that was updated, obviously, then you'll know that you have the equivalent. But it's still a really good thing to practice on. Like I said, I still practice with the 2019 book. And that's still a great book anyway. I mean, the codes are still there and correct and all that good stuff. So, but yes. I see another comment coming in. Yeah. I would say that you have the right choice of book there. Again, I that's what I like. I've always liked Dorland's. When I got here, they said, okay, we're going to give you all your books. So they issued me all my books, my ICD-9. I'm dating myself. My ICD-9 book, my CPT book, my HCPCS book. And they asked me what medical dictionary that I wanted. And they had Tabor's and they had Dorland's. And I was like, can I have the Dorland's? And then she was like, because I can tell you're a book nerd. I go, I am. So it was all nice and wrapped, and I love books. Oh, I love books, but Anyway, so guys, it is late now. We are after 9, and on the East Coast, it's after 10 o'clock. So I don't want to keep you guys up, but I will be back tomorrow, and I will announce tomorrow's video. So I will go ahead and wrap this one up. But thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. If you found value in this, I hope you will give it a thumbs up. Share it if it helped you. And then join me on Facebook. I do have my Facebook Medical Coding with Blue page. And I will be posting about that TC and 26 modifier probably later in this week. So look for it there. Follow me there. Like, subscribe, share, and I will see y'all on the next episode. Bye.